Before I regale you with any more fascinating tidbits about my kinfolk and their notable deeds, I think it's important for us to establish some baseline understanding of how genetic genealogy works. Without it, any mention of second great-grandparents and third cousins twice removed are likely to leave your psyches in a state of disarray. So, let's take a journey back to the basics of human biology. I am a cisgendered female, basically meaning that my body parts correspond with the textbook definition of the female form from birth, which means that in addition to the basic 22 chromosomes found in every relatively healthy human being, I also have 2 X chromosomes, one from my maternal line, my mother to her mother and her mother's mother, and so on. I also have 1 X from my father's mother's mother's mother, etc. Those 2 X's can tell you a lot about my ancestral lineage and its origins, going way back, like the past 500 years or so. And then, of course, once you account for all of the spouses and siblings in between across multiple generations, that, my friends, is your family. This colorful display is how 23andMe painted all of my chromosomes after testing with them. And this information was available to all testers in the company's database up until the big data breach of 2023. Since then, all you'll get to help you with your research is a list of DNA relatives, the percentage of DNA you share, and the number of identical segments, which pretty much means diddly, unless you're a nerd that's traveled deep down the DNA rabbit hole before. We'll get back to that in a moment. From this display, once I explain that the purplish color is African, you can easily see that I am, you guessed it, Black. But what I didn't at all see coming is that my maternal X chromosome would be decidedly non-African. That blue is European, folks. And this is where my DNA journey truly got interesting. Because the narrative that most Black Americans get about slavery is that Massa went tippy-toeing down to the slave quarters at night to have his way with his female captives against their will, as an attempt at producing light-skinned babies that fetched a higher price. That is indeed fact. But my maternal chromosome tells a more complicated story, one that I've learned is particularly prevalent in Virginia, and that is of majority white, free people of color who, somewhat by choice and more so by legal force, maintained their own insular communities for generations until the Emancipation Proclamation freed the enslaved and allowed for all Black folks to marry as they pleased with one another. Deeper still are the white women who, under the certainty of being disowned and disavowed by their families, chose to marry and create families with Black men, watching their racial designation change from white to mulatto or Black on legal forms. Bye-bye white privilege, hello discrimination and scorn, and often the threat of death. So now, back to those percentages. Sean, who is my half-great-nephew, shares 6.35% of his total DNA with me. He is my half-sister's grandchild, if that makes it easier to comprehend. So any relationships to people with equal or higher percentages indicate an approximate degree of separation relative to his. The same can be done with centimorgans, a unit of genetic measurement which is most visible on your relatives list if you test with Ancestry. Every person has about 6,800 centimorgans worth of genetic material, half of that inherited from each parent. So, after seeing a handful of people with names I didn't recognize on my Ancestry list sharing 1,000 centimorgans or more with me, I knew I had stumbled onto a big secret. And when some of my known family turned out not to share any centimorgans with me at all, I understood that I knew practically nothing about who I am. What became paramount to me once DNA testing proved that I had no idea who my mother's blood family really was that those DNA percentages could prove to be a roadmap for me to learn and better understand exactly how I was related to these people I didn't know. Centimorgans could point me to close and close-ish relatives. And once I understood how they were related to one another, I could figure out how all that came down to me. So for all of the conspiracy theorists who loudly proclaim that they would never spit into a tube and give the government access to their genetic material, I hear you. You are entitled to your beliefs and opinions. But for my part, I'm a girl who didn't know until adulthood that she was blood related to a vast array of rural Virginians, black, white, and all shades in between. Spitting into a tube gave me truth and more family than I could have ever imagined. I have a whole new appreciation for third and fourth cousins now. Like the fine print on your side view mirror, objects may be closer than they appear.